All right, let's get to our good friend Alfredo Ortiz. He's the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. He's been on overdrive. I know we saw Biden's speech last night, and this segment with Alfredo Ortiz. I got to tell you, I'm very excited, Alfredo, about your 10 for 20. Take the pledge. Go to 10for20.com. That's 10for20.com. Take the pledge like Ann and I did. And all it says is, I pledge to vote in 2020 and send 10 more people I know and care about to take the pledge to make a difference in the 2020 election. Sign the pledge. Take the pledge. Go vote. Take your friends there. Alfredo Ortiz, President, CEO, Job Creators Network. Great to have you, man.
Hey, John. Good morning. What a week, huh?
You know what? I feel better today about Trump's prospects of winning. I am absolutely convinced, Alfredo, he is going to win again. No doubt in my mind. You know, we got an internal poll last night. You know, we're tied in Minnesota. This is a state that we lost in the last election by, I don't know, 1,500 or something. We're tied in Minnesota. We're within striking distance in Michigan. We're down a couple in Pennsylvania, down a couple in Wisconsin, ahead in North Carolina, ahead in Florida, now pulled way ahead in Georgia, Texas, all the states that the Democrats said are in play. They're not in play. Alfredo, right now, after that speech from Biden last night, I'm feeling really great.
Yeah, you know what, John, and we've talked about this. You know, this election is going to be, and I know people hear this almost every election, but it really is going to be the most consequential election of our lifetimes. It really, really is. I mean, what this convention and Biden's speech yesterday clearly showed is that there is the America that you and I love and that has put us here where we are today, talking about the American dream, enjoying the American dream. And then there's Biden's America, which is literally the antithesis of what we're loving and experiencing right now. When you think about what, first of all, he's recommending in terms of taxes. And I sent you a little thing, by the way. I hope you have an opportunity to put it on your website. It's the best, probably 20 seconds you'll have of laughter. But think about it, $4 trillion in new taxes, John. I mean, new income taxes, new payroll taxes, taxes on businesses, large, medium, small, doesn't matter, taxes on capital gains, new death taxes. I mean, it's just, think about that. How does that even make sense? After, trying to get out of the pandemic, the last thing we need is is a round of taxes, right, to slow down the economy. Only in Joe Biden's America does that make sense. We like to say that this is about, it's a new line for Joe Biden should be, read my lips, all new taxes, right? Because that's what it's about, right? And then on top of that, right, outside of new taxes, you have, again, in only Biden's America, does that make sense? Right in, as we're trying to come out of this pandemic. Peaceful protest? They call this peaceful protest? I mean, you look at just look at what's happening in Portland, in Seattle, in Chicago, on Miracle Mile. Those are not peaceful protests. Again, only in Biden's America would you call that peaceful protest. Defunding the police. We need safe communities. I mean, think about these small businesses out there. I talk to a lot of these small businesses. They're closed because they're afraid to open their doors now, right? They're afraid that they may say something or upset somebody and that they're going to have, Antifa and looters coming through their doors. I mean, again, only in Joe Biden's America would they even think of defunding the police while we have all this lawlessness on the streets. Mm-hmm. School lockdowns, John. I mean, how does that make sense? And then taking choice away from our parents. I mean, you know how many parents out there I get phone calls now from them saying, please, we need to open up our schools. Our kids are just suffering. They're miserable. They're sad. They're depressed, right? I mean, and they're taking away even the choice. With these poor, some parents that I've been talking to, they're like, look, we don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to send our schools to private because our public schools refuse to open. Right? Again, only in Joe Biden's America does all this make sense, and then they call that somehow a moderate platform. Sorry, I'm on a rant today, John.
No, I want you to keep going. I mean, you're on a roll. Alfredo Ortiz with us, the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network, and they have this great theme. You really got to get involved in it. Go to 10for20.com. It'll take you a minute. 10for20.com. You got to take the pledge. I took it. Ann took it. Your pledge is, I'm going to get another 10 people to take the pledge. I mean, we just keep going because, look, Alfredo, this election is about mobilization, not persuasion. And we got to get our people out. That's what they're trying to do. That's what they did last night with Biden's speech. I mean, they have no policies. The guy didn't outline the only policies he has, and you mentioned it, are we're going to raise your taxes like crazy, and you're going to be mandated to wear a mask outside, inside, and we're going to keep you miserable. That's their plan. I mean, they have no policies. Orange man bad, get rid of him, vote me in, I'm grandpa. That's it.
And you know what, John, too? I mean, I'm so sick and tired of Joe Biden, honestly, and the Democrats laying out what they would have done differently on the coronavirus. Seriously? I mean, Monday morning quarterbacking, as you know, is the easiest thing to do, right? When you're in the middle of the actual event that's happening, right, you do the best you can with the information that's provided, right, at the very time. And it changes constantly. I'm kind of reminded a little bit, John, of, Captain Solly, the guy who, crash landed the plane, thank God, very safely. Nobody got injured out in New York. Right. Remember the movie that talked about,
Yep.
You had the NTSB guys who were like, oh, no, but you could have gone to Teterboro, or you could have gone here, you could have gone there, and you could have landed here. And he's like, yeah, but you weren't in that plane when the birds hit.
That's right.
Right? And those 30 seconds were the most crucial 30 seconds, and it was judgment calls that saved all those people, right? And it's the same here. It's the judgment calls that saved millions of people, right? It took quick action. Could we have done things differently? Sure. It's very easy to look in retrospect things that could have been done, right? That's the easy part. It's actually taking the leadership role to do the things that we did do, right? Like closing, China off for inbound travel that saved millions of lives, right? But they don't like position it that way because, of course, that doesn't fit their narrative.
Well, it's all about fitting their narrative. But Alfredo, you look at this 4 days that the Democrats have and, taking God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. The first 3 days were just depressing. We were told by a number of people that if you voted for Trump, you're basically an imbecile and you should be ashamed of yourself. And we were scolded, and they went on to tell us how bad America is. And I just want to get your take on this. In the last 24 months, the Democrats have invented two words, not invented. They've overused two words, and I could put it now in front of any noun: existential and systemic, right? Climate change is an existential threat. Putin's an existential threat. Our democracy is under an existential threat. There's systematic racism. There's systematic this, systematic that. They haven't outlined a single policy in 4 days. Not one thing. So their whole campaign is get rid of Trump. He's bad. We hate his tweets. Can you win on that?
Well, that's what they're obviously hoping, right? I mean, that's why they kept Biden down in the basement. I like calling him Basement Biden. I don't know why Trump hasn't caught that one yet, but Mr. President, if you're listening, call him Basement Biden because that's all it's been, right? I mean, keep him out of the public eye. Keep the entire Democratic Party basically out of any conversations with the press, any real conversations, right? Because they haven't laid out, to your point, any policies. I mean, the only policies, frankly, that we've heard in the entire Democratic convention or discussions of it actually came from Bernie Sanders, where he said many of the ideas we fought for that just a few years ago were considered radical are now mainstream. That's pretty much the only policy that we heard, and that's what it was, right? Radical policies in their mind now in the Democratic platform are considered mainstream policies. And quite frankly, the liberal media is trying to portray this, the Biden-Harris ticket as moderate. I mean, my God, again, only in Joe Biden's America would that platform that they laid out, not even policy, but the platform, would be considered moderate.
It was an unbelievable 4 days. No mention about China in the entire 4 day event. I mean, many of us have said this election is going to go through China. No mention of China. No mention of mobs. And you brought it up. No mention of the small business owners that have been burned out, that stores have been looted, that have been broken up. They can't go back to work. They can't open their business up. They're driven out of towns. No mention of that, like it doesn't exist. These people, they know what's out there. But the problem is, Alfredo, they have is They rode the wave of the protesters at the beginning, and that mobilized their base, no question about it. It elevated their standing in the polls because their activists got very engaged. People were very upset over what happened to George Floyd and the way he was basically murdered in cold blood. We all saw it. People were very sympathetic to what was happening. They wanted change. So Biden rode that wave. But now it's gone, and now it's turned into the opposite because the protesters have turned into mobs and looters, and the Democratic Party is powerless to stop them. In fact, they can't even say anything negative on them because that's their base. So doesn't that put them in a very awkward position?
Well, that's why, John, that's why they didn't really talk about it. Think about it. The entire convention, there was no discussion about the violence and the looting and I don't, there's protests, but then there's the looting and the violence and the Antifa-driven stuff that we're seeing all over now. I mean, New York, Chicago. I mean, it's just everywhere. It's ridiculous. I mean, again, you talk to people all the time as well. What I'm hearing, people are actually afraid now of leaving their homes because they don't feel safe, right? We have to have law and order, right? Safe communities, safe streets. We have to have it. Small businesses have to have it so that they can feel free to open their doors, and quite frankly, so they can have customers walking the streets to be able to get to their doors, right? I mean, this is just ridiculous. 800,000 police out there in our country protect our lives, go out, leave every morning, right? Kiss their families goodbye, and they don't know if they're going to come back, right? It's amazing, and we got to stand up for our police. Thank goodness President Trump obviously knows that from day one. He always stood for our police. Blue lives do matter, right? And they protect our communities, whether they're black, whether they're Asian, whether they're Hispanic. They're out there day in and day out. Are there some rotten apples out there? Absolutely, John. And we have to figure out a system from that perspective. We got to figure out how to root those people out, right? Maybe it's from the very beginning, some kind of maybe psychological process or whatever application. I don't know what the answer is from that perspective. But 800,000 people, yes, there will be a handful of bad cops out there, but we have to thank the police out there that really protect our lives and really help create safe communities. And I feel so sorry for them that right now nobody really on the left is standing up for them. Not once did I hear a single Democrat stand up for our police.
Not one time. Not one time. Look, I got a text here. I've only got a couple of minutes, but I just got to tell you this. This is James from Newport News. I want to get your opinion on this. James texts in. He says, John, I don't see how the convention for the Democrats gained them a single vote. What do you think of that, Alfredo Ortiz?
1,000% agree. I can't imagine. Look, the people who tuned in, and boy, I have to tell you, John, I needed about 10 cups of coffee to get through these things. The people who tuned in were the Democrats that were going to vote for the Democrats anyways. I don't think they moved a single independent vote from the convention.
I agree with that. I think James is spot on. Jeremy in Chesapeake said the whole 4 days was about redistribution of wealth, federalizing the police, eliminating local police, converting to Islamic ideals, and funding China. That's what basically. I mean, China wasn't mentioned, God wasn't mentioned, cops weren't mentioned, mobs weren't mentioned, looting wasn't mentioned. It's like almost they live in an alternative universe. And
John, it's what I said, only in Joe Biden's America.
It's really. And I thought of, look, I thought Obama's speech was just ridiculous. I could barely get through it. But it was Michelle Obama's speech that offended me the most because she lectured me. She lectured us. And it was like wagging her finger, like, how dare you voted for this guy? How dare you did this? And, you want to like Michelle Obama. She's a mom and she was, good first lady and all that. But, I don't want to tune in and get scolded because I voted for Trump, who then turned around and created the greatest economy in the history of the republic. What is wrong with these people?
Yeah. It's just really, the whole thing was was really ridiculous. But John, I know you only have a couple minutes. I just want to make sure people understand our 10for20.com campaign, 10for20.com campaign. It is the most consequential election we will ever have in our lifetime at this point. It is going to be a turnout election. I agree with you. I think there are a lot of people out there that are going to vote for Trump that are just keeping very quiet, but I do not want people to feel complacent about this, right? Do not take anything for granted, right? Get out and vote and get 10 other friends to get out and vote. Pledge that. And that's why we created 10for20.com, 10for20.com, because of that, John. We need people to go out and vote and get others to go out and vote, especially with this whole issue of mail-ins and absentee ballots. You know, absentee ballots, we obviously 1,000% support.
Right.
Very concerned about this mail-in ballot thing, which the media has obscured, you know, kind of the lines between the two. Very concerned about. We need people to physically gather the vote. And I say, if you can go out and pump gas in your car, if you can go to the grocery store to go get some eggs and milk, you can go to your voting booth and vote.
That's it. And here's all you have to do. Go to 10for20.com. That's the number 10for20, 10for20.com. That's all you have to do. Sign up there. Sign the pledge. Again, this is the most consequential election in the history of the Republic, and it's about mobilization, not persuasion. So get involved, 10for20.com. And just got to tell you, I just got a text here from Paul in Mechanicsville showing Alfredo the love. Paul says, your guess is so spot on. I'm taking the 10for20 pledge right now. Business owners are reeling now. And how in the hell can thousands of businesses survive and endure a tax increase? I'm taking your pledge, says Paul in Mechanicsville.
Thank you, Paul.
Showing the love, baby.